to Women Talking About Stuff. I'm Eleanor.
And I'm Isabel.
And this week we will be talking about sustainable fashion with our special guest, Margaret.
Hello.
This week, our favorite woman of the week is Christy Dawn Peterson, and Margaret is going to tell us a little bit about her.
Okay, so she is the founder and head designer of the brand Christy Dawn, which creates primarily dresses that are made out of dead stock fabric, meaning Christy Dawn themselves didn't create the fabric, they just use leftover fabric from larger fashion houses, and then they ensure that each of their dressmakers makes a living wage. And they let you into a lot of the factory process, and they're generally just really big advocates for a lot of transparency, sustainability, and overall ethical practices in the fashion industry. More recently they've been, donating a lot of their proceeds to help Australia with the fires, and overall just trying to change a lot of the really negative influences in the fashion industry.
Margaret, can you talk a little bit about your experience with sustainable fashion, how you got into it, how long you've been into it,
Yeah, so I first heard about it a few years ago because, there are a lot of up-and-coming, more sustainably oriented brands, and I think that younger people today tend to be more environmental just as a trend. Mm-hmm. But I think August of 2018 is when I decided, okay, I'm going to limit as much as possible the amount of non-sustainable ethical purchases of clothing that I make, and I also want to try to limit the amount of clothing that I have. Mm-hmm. And I think the most important thing with that is that it's not about being perfect, but I think that it is a certain amount of your responsibility as a person with privilege to not overly consume things that are not made in a way that's good for the environment or the people that make them. So that's been sort of a year and a half of having to do a lot more research with the things I buy, but I think it's just been good of being conscious, and I think that everybody does that to varying extents, but what you eat and what you buy and all this stuff. So that's just kind of it.
So, thank you. This week we will be talking about a little bit of the issues with non-sustainable clothing, and also easy ways that you can begin to be more sustainable with your clothing, and some different options with that. So we will cut to a music break, and then we will be right back.
Goodbye.
The Hello and welcome back. We are here with our very special guest, Margaret, and we are talking about shopping sustainably.
Yes.
And so right now we're going to get into a little bit of the issues with not shopping sustainably, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Like what the current problem is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the major issues that people have right now is that our consumer culture has changed fairly rapidly. One of the statistics I have is that people buy 60% more clothes in 2014 than they did in 2000. And I think that even just looking around, there's a culture of, oh, I'm going to go to the mall on Saturday and buy a bunch of stuff. And I can certainly speak for Eleanor and I.
We used to do that.
We would do that.
Yeah.
Fairly often. And it'd be like, oh, I don't like this a lot, but I like it enough and I'm going to get it because I want to wear new things.
I think just like, again, the exciting of having new things in your closet, and then you wouldn't really wear it that much. It'd be cheap, so you buy a lot of it. And I think
especially
that a huge thing with, I see that with people now is like with Wish and Romwe and kind of those like, you know,
I can buy 10 things at once and it's only $30.
Yeah, and I think that it's like, it's not even that I want this much stuff, or people feel the need that they need to buy it because it's so cheap.
Yeah.
And it's really terrible quality and it's not going to last that long, but it's like, oh, it's cheap, and so I need to get it because it's cheap.
Yeah,
you know?
and the other end of that is that the average American discards 68 pounds of clothing a year, and 85% of that goes to landfills. So I think what we're seeing is people have their clothes have a short lifespan in their closet because the whole concept of being trendy, I guess. I think it's big of like...
Yeah. Forever 21, I would say, too.
Forever 21, the really, really cheap, because obviously there is a range of price, but I think that when it comes to really, really cheap retailers, and they have fashion seasons every week. They release new clothes every week.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to want all of it. And if you don't have it, you're not being trendy. And I think especially for young people, that's, you know, a major, you know, problem. And I have another figure of the U.S. generates 25 billion pounds of brand new textiles per year.
Jeez.
But, you know, it's the concept of our consumer culture is everything has to be new. And if it's not new, it can be discarded.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, what the real crux of the problem is that people want new stuff cheaply made.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what the reason why companies who can make so much money is that they have to skimp on materials, skimp on labor. And, you know.
Yeah. I feel like a store like that I feel like is really bad is like Urban Outfitters, because what they do is like they're a huge chain, so they have a ton of money, so they just like have sales like all the time, like sales on sales, which gets everyone to buy their stuff. And I feel like people around here do have a lot of money, but they don't like spending it on clothes, and so they like to kind of like get cheap clothes and not like thrift it. They like to literally go to like department stores. Yeah.
All of the things have it as a markdown.
Yeah.
It was never marked down. It was always supposed to cost this much. And it's this illusion, you know.
And I think with Urban Outfitters is that obviously they're smart in terms of the trends. Is that, and so we'll get into this with a lot more detail later, but you know, one thing that's very trendy right now is thrifting and vintage. And so Urban Outfitters will model vintage styles and kind of 90s kind of a look. And so you're not thrifting, you're not, you know, being sustainable, but you still have that look, which is much easier. And obviously, I know you'll get into this more later too, but Urban Outfitters is a key, terrible labor and not, you know, ethical conditions at all. Right. So I think that, again, it's very trendy, people like it. I think it's so interesting. You know, we used to shop at Urban Outfitters. If you get something, there'd be 10 people at school that have the exact same thing.
Yeah. It's so popular and widespread.
Yeah. That's very true.
It's just an interesting like observation of the people that I know and I interact with. And so many of them, again, go on like binge shopping experiences.
Yeah.
Where it's like I bought 10 things, I bought 20 things, and they were all $5, and now I have a bunch of new stuff to wear. And I assume there's some sort of dopamine brain chemistry thing associated with buying.
And again,
we used to do that. Retail therapy. I feel like such a thing, but it's like...
And it's hard to distance yourself from that.
Yeah.
But, you know, the dark side of that which I will get into right now, is that the manufacture of most of these clothes is extremely harmful to the environment, and the working conditions of the workers who have to create them is completely unacceptable. So one thing that I thought was interesting is that it takes 2,700 liters of water to make a new cotton shirt.
Wow.
That, you know, just even thinking about that, that's a lot. You know, and I think about it in terms of people buy new stuff all the time, and you get rid of clothes that you don't really like anymore, but like that has a footprint if you think about it. And it's just interesting. I don't know, I think that there's so much of buying that you're not supposed to question or think about.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think about it, but when you think about it, you're like, oh, I guess that makes sense.
I think another huge thing is a lot of brands will market themselves as seeming kind of ethical, which makes them
H&M.
which makes them people have a little more peace of mind. Exactly, that's what I was gonna say.
Like, oh, look at this vegan like leather thing, and I'm like,
yeah, and I think
I feel like, and this is a little bit of a side note, and I will get into it more later. But H&M conscious of like, we use organic cotton on this $8 shirt, guys. But also, if you're like, well, I'm supporting H&M conscious, it's still H&M. I feel like that's confusing to me. You know, as a consumer, people are, you know, I've had people talk to me about like, well, I'm really into sustainable clothing. I like H&M conscious, and I think that I'm not trying to like, like gatekeep who's into sustainable clothing, and I think it's really awesome that people show an interest. But I think taking an extra step to be like, they're doing that to be in line with consumer trends. Yeah. And it feels much more about appearances than actuality because it's a line. It's not their whole brand.
And I think you make a really good point, and Urban Outfitters does this too, of they have like a section that's like
reworked vintage
vintage pieces. And again, with H&M, Urban Outfitters, it's great that they have a very small chunk of their company that is trying to be conscious. But when you are, you know, paying money for those pieces, that money isn't going to just that chunk. It is going to the whole corporation. Right. And so then you are further contributing to not sustainable practices. Yeah. Which is, and again, I think that, you know, we want to be super clear. This isn't about like saying people like, oh, you aren't sustainable, that's bad. It's more like, again, all of us used to shop this way. Yeah. It is about, you know, educating yourself and doing the research. And I think that, again, it's really hard when it seems like on the surface these companies are doing some good things. Right. But really they aren't. And that's what's hard, is that you really have to be super duper careful.
I just want to get into more about ethical fashion, because it's kind of related to sustainable fashion, but not totally the same when it comes to workers' rights. So I have a quote from Andrew Morgan, who did the documentary The True Cost, which you guys might have heard of. It's all about this topic, and it goes, 80 billion pieces of clothing are purchased worldwide each year, which is 400% more than a decade ago. 3 out of 4 of the worst garment factory disasters in history happened in 2012 and 2013. As the death toll increased, so did the profits. And that's sort of in reference to the 2013 Bangladesh garment factory collapse that killed 1,134 people. So I think that when there's this, you know, tangible devastation, you know, the way fast fashion works, it relies on terrible conditions in these factories in order to create this volume of products for the consumer base. And it has a death toll. And I think that's where a lot of people are ignorant about the ramifications of their purchases. And if you're buying something from Romwe or Shein, and I think most recently Fashion Nova was exposed for having such terrible conditions, that's what you are, you know, voting with your dollar to kind of support. And I don't mean to say everyone that buys from those stores is wrong to do so, and I know especially, I wouldn't mean to say that economic limitations make you a bad person, but I think just being cognizant of the implications of your actions a little bit.
Yeah, and I think there's a real difference in kind of where you're coming from buying these things, because obviously, you know, if there is economic limitations, but I feel like I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube of kind of clearly privileged, more like influencer type people, and in those situations, the video is, oh, my $400 Shein haul. Clearly, there's not really an economic disadvantage there. So I think that if you're supporting these companies and buying so much clothes for little amounts of money, that money could be going towards a brand, the money that you have, to a much more ethical, company.
And by the same token, people that do $1,000 Gucci, Louis Vuitton hauls, the same applies. Large, expensive luxury fashion houses are not necessarily better. Price does not mean better. So I think it's just, look into a company's background and their practices, because a lot of them, it's not great.
I remember last year we went to like a presentation, a club, well I guess UNICEF is more than a club, but the UNICEF club at our school was putting on like a presentation about women, and like a little movie about women, but one of the things was a presentation about this woman, and I forget, she has like a company here now, I forget what it's called. Right. She's very into like sustainability, because she was talking about supporting women, because she talked about how she grew up working in these factories in terrible conditions, not getting breaks,
making $3 a day,
like being sick from the fumes. And one line that really stuck out to me was, she said when she moved to the U.S. and she finally sort of had like her own money, she went to a department store and she literally felt sick, because she was like, I wish people felt like the tears that I like was crying while making the clothes, and I wish when people bought clothes, they knew that it would be like a little kid, making these clothes and like getting sick because of it,
Right.
And that was just
that
really
people
striking.
bought it like it was nothing, when she knew
like
what goes into it.
It literally almost like killed her, and it almost kills these workers, and it does kill these workers.
Yeah, it like,
doesn't help them in any way.
Right. And it's people, especially Bangladesh, one of the poorest countries in the world, it's an exploitation of the dire feeling in that country.
Yeah.
People can work for $3 a day because otherwise they would have no money.
Yeah.
And I think that doesn't happen in the first world as much, because people aren't willing to do those sorts of things. And, I commonly hear the argument of like, well, how else are people in Bangladesh supposed to make money? And I don't have an answer to that question.
Yeah.
But I don't think that thousands of people should be dying in garment factory collapses.
Yeah.
I think the standards need to be raised, and I think we need to hold American companies more accountable, especially when the CEOs are billionaires. Zara, one of the richest men in the world. I just don't buy that it's impossible to make it better.
I know. And if you think that there's small companies that are sustainable, and I'm like, if they do it and they're not multimillionaires or billionaires, it means that it's like feasible
it's
to
human
do.
greed that causes
and I
this.
think the thing with those companies is that, a lot of these smaller, very sustainable companies, the reason why a lot of the garments are so expensive is because, they are smaller companies. But when you have, again, like you gave the example of Zara, where, it's an extremely, extremely rich man, they do have the money to kind of, improve those conditions without making, the cost of the clothes ridiculous. But
I think that it's important to be on your toes a little bit with that sort of thing. And I just, I talk about this with a lot of people that I know, and a lot of times people are hesitant to think that there's an easy fix, and I'm not advocating for an easy fix, but I think that people with privilege and spending power need to know where they're putting it, and we need to hold companies accountable, because again, factory collapses, absolutely abysmal wages, that's not the best you can do.
Yeah.
I disagree with the notion that that's the best they can do.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for the fabrics they use. Polyester is the most popular fabric used in fashion, but when they're washed in domestic washing machines, they shed microfibers and lead to increasing levels of plastic in the oceans. Dyes are in offshore rivers in a lot of the countries where manufacturing occurs. It's hard because a lot of people that buy the clothes, they don't see the work that goes into it, they don't see the environmental hit that goes into it, because it's hitting people in the third world.
Yeah.
And when it's far away from you, I think it's easy to act like it's not happening.
Yeah.
But I think that's a flawed way to go about your life.
Because I feel like they like you said, it's not like a direct impact. So they're like, oh, well, I guess it's not impacting anyone. Or it's not that impactful if I'm not being impacted by it.
Right.
And it's like, that's not the case. Like, just because you don't see the repercussions of your actions doesn't mean there's no repercussions.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, I think that's human. It's easy to ignore if you don't hear about it. And that's why I think, documentaries like The True Cost are so important, because I think, again, a lot of people, it is just kind of a level of blissful ignorance of, if they did know about it, they probably wouldn't be as inclined to, again, do $500 hauls of Shein. I don't think that it's malintent. I think it's just kind of a lack of information.
I really doubt that people are going out to Forever 21 hoping to be like, yeah, I don't care about the workers that made this. I don't care about the environment because I want to look cute. I think it's that it doesn't affect you. Obviously, the companies aren't open about this, and until fairly recently, it wasn't a widely talked about thing.
No. And as we talked about too, it's very appealing. It's very cheap, very trendy. It's the marketing campaigns are designed to make you want to buy clothes there. And so again, we're not saying people are like, oh, you're a terrible person, change your ways. We're
they're all still on their honeymoon. Just read the dialogue below. Everyone loves you. Why should they not? And I'm there.
Hello. Sorry. So sorry.
Hello!
I kind of want to just keep all of this.
Welcome back. No. Okay. Welcome back to Women Talking About Stuff, where this week we are talking about sustainable fashion.
And we sort of have talked about the issues with not shopping sustainably and the repercussions. So now we're going to talk about some solutions, I guess, or some ways
you can contribute.
You can shop sustainably and
we'll give a variety of different options for what you can do, and it kind of ranges in economic accessibility, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Margaret, do you want to take it away?
Yes. So I first want to start with a disclaimer. I think that a lot of sustainable companies and fashion brands are expensive.
Yeah.
They're
definitely
more expensive than a regular person wants to spend on them. They're more expensive than I will spend on clothes, and usually I'll get them used. They're just not an everyone sort of thing. And also, I think that a lot of that has to do with curbing how much you buy.
Yeah.
Because you can't buy a $200 dress every month.
Yeah.
You can buy one once for 2 years.
Yeah, and I think that is kind of representative of you kind of need to change the way you think about it.
Right.
Like, again, I'm going to use me and Margaret as an example. So we used to be very not sustainable. We would go to the mall and we'd go to Gap and H&M and buy probably I don't know, $100 worth of stuff. I would say every once in a while. Maybe a couple times a year. And instead, what I think, if you change the way you think about it, is every couple of months you buy one expensive piece that's going to last you a really long time. So now it is, and so that's kind of, in my opinion, I think a better investment, because you'll have a really unique piece that will last a really long time, that you can get a lot of use out of, that's really good quality, and then that was made ethically. And I think that that's just kind of a more sustainable way to go about it.
And to be honest, this isn't necessarily supported by facts, but it's a logical reasoning. People with more disposable incomes are the people that are mass consuming things.
Yeah.
You need to make a certain amount of money to shell out $400 to buy a bunch of clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think people of lower socioeconomic statuses are the problem.
Oh, yeah, completely.
Here.
I
just, that's not an argument I would make. But when it comes to sustainable fashion brands, if we're just going to talk about them, I think they are kind of very alluring for what they are. A lot of them are founded and run by women, which is really cool, especially in contrast. It feels like almost all CEOs of fashion companies are male.
Yeah.
But, Reformation, Christy Dawn, La Causa,
Paloma Wool.
These are all run by women with almost all female teams. And I think that there's just they're very in tune with who their market is.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that they're like, okay, I'm going to make something that's going to cost more than something from Forever 21 is going to cost. But you can have
Everlane. Let's not forget Everlane.
Everlane, I think I want to circle back to.
Yeah.
But you will love it for years, you will have it for years, and it'll flatter you and be beautiful. And I think that that's a totally different mission statement than I'm going to make you trendy.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, I feel like they don't just have $50 white t-shirts. All of their stuff is nice
unique.
And pretty, and unique, and it has nice cuts and stuff, and it's really obviously it's good quality stuff, but it's not just random t-shirts that you're
thoughtful.
Okay. Yeah, it's very
thoughtful
thoughtful, because they know that what they are making is expensive, and so they're well, I want to get people to want to buy this, and so how would I get people to do that?
Yeah, right. And I think a brand like Everlane, which we talked about briefly, is that their mission statement is radical transparency. That's kind of their main angle, and they tend to make clothes that is a similar price range to Gap, I would say. They have a lot of sort of
similar clothes to Gap, I would
professional
say, too.
basics.
Yeah.
But they tell you the name of the factory it's made. They're all made ethically. And a lot of times they have water conserving, jeans, because jeans are made of cotton. They have their Renew line, which is about making things out of recycled plastics, which is just really cool.
Yeah.
And, it's none of it is cheap. I wouldn't classify any of it as cheap.
Yeah.
But if you can comfortably shop at Gap frequently, that's this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that if the main thing I would say about sustainable companies is that I know they're more expensive, and that means you can't have as much of it, but what you do have, you will cherish.
Yes,
Yeah.
well said. And I think, to just like kind of a fun random thing with Everlane, a specific piece of clothing that both me and Margaret love a lot. They're called bottle sweaters. I don't think that's what they're actually called, but that's what we call them.
Renew
They're Renew fleece, but they're made out of recycled bottles, and they are like just really cool and just like very unique, and they come in a lot of
really
colors.
practical.
They're really practical, like, fleece, like either like crew neck or zip up, and it's just really fun because they're just made out of recycled bottles, which is just kind of just really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'm sure, we'll get into this with more detail later, but again, the other thing too to keep in mind with any brand, but especially sustainable brands, is that you can get them secondhand.
Right.
So you can have these really unique pieces that are made sustainably, and if you get them secondhand, you can save so much money. Like, they're on many, with especially Reformation, which is very expensive. I don't think, I never buy it from Reformation, and I can get it from, and we'll talk about it with more detail secondhand, for, and save $60, $70, $80, even $100 sometimes, and that is just huge.
Well, the thing I would say about a lot of these brands is that they have like a cult following a little bit, I guess. They have there's a community of people that really like their pieces. So, and I think that there's a lot of overlap between those communities and the communities that would use Depop, Poshmark, eBay to an extent. ThredUp.
Yeah.
Instagram sellers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are all kind of ways that you can buy things secondhand that are still new and you like them a lot. I mean, new in the sense of they haven't been, worn a ton before.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something really intimidating about the price range of a lot of these brands.
Yeah.
That this sort of takes the edge off of it a bit. There are some brands that I think look really cool, but it's like, that's
so much
$400, and I will get it for $100 on Poshmark.
Yeah, and I think all of these kind of apps or websites or whatever you want to call them are really helpful, and I think that if you know what you're looking for, it can be just very, because I think sometimes if you open some of these apps, it's really daunting, like there's so much clothes, what do I search, what do I look for? And I think what I would say if you're starting out is know the brands that you like, know what kind of styles you like, even kind of knowing what colors you're looking for. And even like, let's say you really like Urban Outfitters, search Urban Outfitters and get it secondhand.
ThredUp has a ton of Urban Outfitters.
That's sustainable. You can get brands you like, just if they're secondhand, it's not, detrimental or contributing.
If you really, really love a brand, you can continue to get it just secondhand, and all of it'll still probably be new. And a similar, like, in-person version of that would be like a consignment store. It's different from a thrift store in that the store will buy it from the person, but way, way discounted. Practically new, Free People, Urban Outfitters, what have you.
You can do any of those brands. And I think that, like, Urban Outfitters, like, a lot of the clothes are like $40, $50. On something like ThredUp, they'll be like $7, $12.
Yeah.
And that is some big saving. And I think another really important thing to note with Depop, Poshmark, I'm not as familiar with ThredUp because I mainly use Poshmark and Depop, but you can message the seller, and a lot of times you can negotiate the prices. And so there are a lot of times where, for example, the very shirt that I have on my body, was sold on Reformation for $140. And That's a lot of money. And so the seller on Poshmark was selling it for $90. And so they have kind of an offer system. So I offered to buy it for $70 and she took it. And so now I got a shirt that was originally $140 that was made sustainably and cost $140 for $70. And I think that, again, that's the kind of savings that you can get with a lot of Poshmark and Depop. And again, I think also it's incredibly convenient that you don't have to go into a store or anything. No. You can just buy it and get it straight to your house. I think one more thing that's really important to note with these is to measure yourself and to know your sizing. Right. Mm-hmm. So I know for a lot of people are like, oh, I don't really want to buy pants online. But I think that if you measure yourself, I see the key measurements to know are your waist, your hips, the inseam, how high you want the pants to go. Again, and the inseam is how long the leg is. And I think that if you know and you memorize those numbers, if you're not sure if something's going to fit you, you can message the seller and ask them. They have, comment sections and messaging things, so you can ask them. And because again, if you're going to spend money on a good quality a piece of clothing, know that it's going to fit you. So then again, it's just much more of a good investment if you know it's going to fit you perfectly.
Right. And I feel like all of the sellers are like very kind, because they just are like, I have these clothes that I want to like get rid of, and so that if you have any questions, like they'll answer them. Like I've asked questions about like dress measurements before, or like
how good of condition it's in.
Or to add pictures if you want to see what it looks like more.
That's another thing too, that if they don't have any pictures, you can ask, hey, could you add a picture?
If they will not give them to you, maybe don't buy
that. Maybe ask like, oh, can you show a picture of it like on you, just so I can get like a feeling. And that's another thing too, to see how it fits on maybe not just on the model, but like on an actual person.
And they do tend to point out if there's any sort of like little stain on an item or something, and they normally mark it down because of that.
And mark it down a lot.
Yeah, and like honestly, I've like Poshmark more so because I think it's easier, but I've gotten like a lot of like private discounts, like because you can like heart items without like buying them, so that people know like, oh, you're interested in it. And so then if you haven't bought it, the seller will a lot of the times give you private discounts, or be like
around 20%.
Yeah, usually or they'll like free shipping, which is really nice. Or just last night I bought a pair of very nice linen pants from Depop, but they were $80 and I didn't want to spend $80, so I just messaged the woman. I'm like, can you please lower the price because I really like your pants? And she's like, of course.
Yes.
And so she did.
Good tip, I think, is that if you find an item you really, really like on Poshmark, see if the seller's on Depop, because Poshmark takes a greater percentage of the seller's, like of the sale. They have fees, so it might be cheaper on Depop. I would always check.
Always check.
If the item is there. If it's like a one-off item, like a vintage piece, I think there's a good chance it probably will not be.
Yeah.
But if it's like, oh, here's this brand and this product. Check.
I would say, again, I think if you get anything from this video, I think our biggest tip would be to go to these websites, because you can if you're smart about it and you get good at it, it's really insane how much money you can save. And I also think too, with especially Depop, there are some really unique vintage pieces from like I was looking, and there's stuff from like the 50s that are so cool and so unique, and a lot of them are so cheap. It's insane. Like I would say on average, most of the things I buy from Depop aren't above $12.
Yeah, I mean, I bought this sweater from Depop and it was like $20, and I was like, I'm like, okay, I'll spend $20 because it's like a nice sweater, but I mean, like for a good sweater, like $20 is insane.
Yeah, and I think that's what's nice is you have, again, I think what we talked about earlier is that a lot of the lure of brands like Forever 21 is how cheap it is. So here you have essentially, like, again, really, really inexpensive clothing, but it's really good quality, really unique, and it's not harming the environment. So, yeah.
One thing, though, that I think is kind of good, though, about the price of a lot of these products is that it gives you a lot more pause before you buy. It's easy to impulsively buy something that is $10.
That is so true.
It's not easy to impulsively buy something that is $100. I will, a lot of times, especially if I'm, like, lead up to like the holidays or birthday. It's like, okay, what do I want? Because I want to be intentional about it. So I'll think about it for a few weeks, maybe make an offer to see if I can get it to be lower, wait for a sale, but think about it. Like, let me plan out what I would wear this with. And if I can wear this with a lot of things,
that's true.
then I can wear it a lot and really get a lot of use out of it, and it'll serve me well. As opposed to, well, I'm panicked, I just want this. I think it's a really different way to get things, and I think that because you spend more time and it costs more, you just get less.
Yeah, which is...
It's important to get less,
And
I think,
consumer.
generally.
So yeah, that's a really good point, too. So I think that, I completely agree that, again, it's really nice that some of these prices are a lot lower, but it is important to be mindful and generally buy less clothing. I think, And I think, too, obviously, online thrifting and buying things secondhand is really awesome and easy, but, you know, of course, there is thrift stores, too.
Yeah. Thrifting consignment.
Yeah, for sure. Which are very fun to go to.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
I mean, I'm assuming most people have been in thrift stores. I have met people that haven't been to a thrift store before, and I'm like, weird. But, you know, Goodwill, Salvation Army, were they homophobic? Was that...
Yeah.
Are they
No,
still?
they are. They still are.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
it was something that they're not, but like, I don't
No,
know
but
if I
like
trust
pretty much
that.
like I think the Salvation Army is that they won't let gay people
Or
Or
trans people partake in their like services.
Yeah,
Huh.
or they like turn them away from their shelters.
Yeah, so
but, like,
maybe not.
So
take
let's
past-
just stick to like
yeah.
a Goodwill and a
Goodwill.
Savers.
Goodwill.
Savers
Yeah.
is good
Yeah.
too.
Or your local thrift store.
Right,
I feel
'cause
like is
what
not going to
is-
be homophobic.
Yeah.
What is
Well, I don't
there's
know where you
Encore
live.
and more wherever
Yeah,
you live.
you know, if you live around here, there's Crossroads. That's not a.
That's
like
a chain, I
That's a
think.
yeah.
Yeah,
that
Buffalo
is.
Exchange
Buffalo
is about the
Exchange.
same. Crossroads.
Ooh, Buffalo Exchange.
Yeah. So.
But I think it's important. We already talked about the distinction, but a thrift store is just people donate their old clothes, and unless it's really, really tattered, it's on the shelves. Consignment, the store buys it
And they
from
have to
the
like
person. They're usually more expensive, but they're usually also better quality. They're usually more brand names, and new with tags is more of a thing in consignment
yeah.
than it is in thrift stores.
Yeah.
One more thing on online, what I'd say too, there's really cool stuff on Etsy. I feel like
Etsy's great for vintage.
most people wouldn't necessarily think like to, but maybe they do, I don't know, to buy like vintage and things from Etsy, but there's really good stuff.
I feel like you can find anything on Etsy, honestly.
More or
Moral of
less,
the story.
it's not just like for crafts.
No.
No.
But
They have some beautiful jewelry.
Yeah.
Not gonna
But
lie.
with thrift stores, I've been to many a thrift store, and there are differences in thrift
For
stores.
sure.
Yeah.
I think depending on where they are and who donates to them.
Yeah.
And I think that you can also have an off day. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you're like, awesome, I found
This and
two
this
things
and
that
this.
are really great. And then sometimes like, I didn't even see a thing I liked.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Because I think
You don't
again,
have to buy it.
you know,
Don't get it if you don't like it.
yeah, and I think that's again, you know, this is kind of going back to consumer culture, is that like, if I'm going out to buy something, I need to buy something. Like, oh, I just need to buy something. But I think, again, like you said, you know, you can go to thrift stores or maybe look on Depop or something, and you don't like anything. You don't buy anything.
Yeah,
That's
it's just
okay.
that.
That's okay.
It's okay.
But yeah, I think I just want to circle back to a really important point you made, is, again, I think it's just good practice to buy less things. Because again, sometimes, you know, again, especially with these like Depop or Poshmark, it's so easy to like heart everything you see, and then you know, look. Sometimes I do this a lot where it's like, okay, I'm gonna look at my cart. Again, like you said, what would I wear this with? When would I wear it? Do I actually need it? Probably not. But it's really fun just to like look through.
Because there's some really cool stuff.
That I would never buy or
shopping
wear.
also fun.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do anything. You can
just look.
Yeah.
But I think that in my experience, I have met some people that are like, Goodwill? Like, But this might be petty, so you guys can fully cut this out. But the rise of Ashley Best Dressed, I think, has changed the way people think about thrifting on YouTube. Because she's like, you know, a thrift gal and what have you. And I think that thrifting is almost trendy now.
Yeah.
Which isn't a problem so much as I think that people romanticize it, and I think that's why Urban Outfitters has been so successful by selling, like, a tattered flannel.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's almost so trendy that people are like, but thrifting is more work.
Yeah.
It's not cute right away.
Yeah.
You have to look. You have to,
Totally.
you know, they're not organized. They're organized usually by color or size, and you have to look through all the hangers, and then you have to try it on and see if it actually looks cute.
Yeah.
And I hesitate to endorse it of, like, it's super cute and great and you can look the best you've ever looked, because I don't know if people internalize that in totally the right way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, I don't think this is to necessarily knock specifically Best Dressed, the YouTube channel. I don't know.
No!
Because I think she is very self-aware, and she's brought that up in her videos, the kind of the romanticism of thrifting. And so, again, it's not a knock against her. I think it's just she's very popular, and people watch the videos and see, like, what she finds.
She's, like, 2.5 million subscribers.
I think you make a good point. It is something to be aware of with, I would say especially with in-person thrift stores, is that you're not gonna, like, show up and find, like, beautiful high-waisted 90s Levi's jeans.
You're not gonna find, like, a 501 casual.
You're not gonna, I think a lot of people also post live videos of, like, oh, I found, you know, designer in my thrift store. Yeah, because they probably sat and looked through every piece of clothing.
And sometimes there's a designer section, and those are, like, more expensive, or you went to a vintage store, and those are expensive.
Yeah. I think,
you know,
another thing I would say, too, is when you're buying that you can do is learn how to alter your clothes, even just a little bit.
Right. Things you thought you didn't like.
Yeah. And I think that goes with even easier is just styling it a different way.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, I think it's better if something, like, you really like it, but it's a little bit too big, you can alter it. And you don't necessarily have to be good at sewing. Like, an example that I do is that, like, if my jeans are a little bit too big, I, like, cut slits in the waistband in the back and put an elastic through and just safety pin it. And then immediately it'll fit me much, much better. So I think, again, and you can look this up on YouTube and find a lot of really easy ways to do it, even without sewing. And so, again, you can buy pieces you really like, and if they almost fit you, but not quite, and then you can alter them. So, yeah.
Well, shall we say new releases?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately this week there are no new releases directed by women, but I think there will be more in the next couple weeks. So we have that to look forward to.
Look out.
But, Little Women is still in theater.
Still see it.
Still see it.
Still see it.
Still
yeah.
see it.
See it again.
See it again. See it, take your friends.
Take your mom.
Take your mom.
Take your
dad.
grandparents.
Take Bob Odenkirk.
He's already in it.
I know, but he's all of our dads.
Oh yeah, because we are all his Little Women.
Yes.
Anyway, so thank you for watching.
Yes.
Tune in next week for a new episode, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
You look just like my dad. Back when I thought I had the best one. Oh, what a life it could have been. Me in the cradle, you on the screen. But you're too young to be father to me. She loved me. What a life, just you and I, learning to walk as you had your life. But you're too old to be a mother to me. You're too as I play this out of tune guitar, and oh, just think what we could be. I swear I'll just cooler if you just go home with me, but you're too young to be a lover to me. You're too I'm getting older, but I forget sometimes, you see. You're too surely you're not saying TV lies. I truly believe that I will have it all my life. So don't you waste my time. Don't you waste my time.